had been working with Trevor for some time on putting the album together, and he really wanted me to branch out a little bit, to listen to some other folks, to do something different than what I usually do. And so it's funny how you do something and you come back to it, and then it has a whole other dimension because of other things that have happened in life. So when we were having one of our meetings, I had just gotten back from New Orleans. And so I asked him, I said, you know, a while back, we did a gig at a New Orleanian styled restaurant, and we did Paul Simon's Gone at Last as a second line. I said, why don't we just do that? Why don't we record that? And I said, but I said, I had been, when I was in New Orleans, I had re-met a trumpeter named Ephraim Towns. And I saw him every day. I was in New Orleans for a week. Every day I saw Ephraim somewhere playing with the band. And I was lucky because he knew I was a singer, and so he was doing a gig at a place called the Candlelight Lounge in Treme. And so he invited me to come and listen to them. And so a couple of girlfriends I was in New Orleans with, we went. And it stuck with me, and there's just something about that sound that you can't escape it once it's in your head. So Trevor and I talked about it some more, and he and I both felt like it couldn't be a mimic. It had to have like the real sound of New Orleans. So he suggested that we meet with Kenny Sarah, whom I didn't know. Trevor introduced me to him, and I'm really lucky that he did, because I adore Kenny. He's wonderful. So we met, and Kenny agreed to produce Gone at Last for me, and he hired Mark Justin to do the arrangement, and so we recorded it with a brass band. It's Kenny on drums and percussion, and Mark Justin's on piano, and we got a whole bunch of great players. But I know Jeff Kay did the trumpet solo, and Louis Van Taylor, whom I knew, and there's several other musicians. But we've got trombone, trumpet, a couple of saxes, the sousaphone, and the percussion, and a lot of hand claps, and Kenny and I are singing background vocals, and it's really stirring. One of the cool things about recording something like that with someone who's from New Orleans is the reminder of the importance of the second line. And that's the tune you do, that's the tune you hear when the loved one has been buried and you're leaving the cemetery and you parade down the street. And so being mindful of that, one of the recording sessions I actually went dressed, and it was a hot day, dressed like I was going to a funeral. And when I walked into the studio, I told Kenny, I said, okay, if I'm going to a funeral, then I'm going to dress the part. He cracked up laughing. But I was really mindful of that, and what was really interesting to me is that while I was in the recording studio, in the booth that day, I could feel the presence of a friend of mine I'd lost a couple years before, all 6'2" of her. She was there, and so it gave it a really different feel for me. Yeah, so it's a celebration of her, and it's a nod to Ephraim, and it was just the perfect tune to fit at the end of the body of the album. So I hope you tap your toe to that one, at least if you don't pull out your parasol.